So just imagine if you were getting ready for a wedding of yourself or a family member. You're sending out all these beautiful invitations. And imagine if what happens in this gospel happened to you. You're sending these out to people that you really care about. Maybe they're your own family members, maybe your deep friends, or maybe people that you want to be a part of the celebration. At first, they just ignore it. Have you ever had that experience where they don't really send anything back? Send another one. But this time, you send it with the actual person themselves who's bringing it, hand-delivered. And imagine if they took that person, beat them up, or killed them, and sent them back to you. I mean, do you see the ridiculousness of this? This is this total generous invitation, and the people are responding in such a crazy way. And this is the invitation, ultimately, when we really look at it, this feast of the Lamb of God. These people are being invited, in a certain sense, to their own wedding. And this is the way that they respond. And then we also have this sort of weird moment in which you might say, wow, that was kind of a tough thing for the poor guy who, comes, maybe he's, off of the streets or whatever, and he comes and maybe he doesn't have time to put on his wedding garments, and he's there, just kind of, out of place. The king sees him and says, hey, where's your tuxedo? Where's your wedding garment? And then he kicks him out. You might say, wow, that was kind of harsh. But it's important for us to remember, in this time, part of that wedding invitation would be the wedding garment gift itself. And they would receive that at the door. Every single person would receive that as a gift from the king. So if someone is in the wedding banquet without that, what they did is they took it. Maybe they put it on for a little while, but then they trashed it. Or maybe they took it and just threw it in the dumpster and said, I like what I have better. Now imagine if someone did that to you. Or imagine, bridesmaids who, have these beautiful dresses that, the bride is getting as part of that package or so. And what if they just come in jeans to the wedding? They're like, where's your bridesmaid dress? And it's like, oh, I threw it away. You're like, wow, you didn't even pay for it and you threw it away. Do you see how we see the response of the people coming to such generosity? And it's so different. So why is this? Well, some of it we can see maybe from this first reading. It talks about the mountain of the Lord of hosts. This is where the wedding is going to be. This is where the feast is going to be. And not only is the Lord going to provide us the best of food, the best of celebration, but he's going to take away every fear, everything that keeps us from really being able to live the way that we were made. Ultimately, the fear of death, which is the last of the enemies to be destroyed. Why would you not want to go to that kind of feast? Everything that you're looking for, everything that you were made for. Well, it's because if you look at this mountain, which is the mountain where the temple is, the mountain of Jerusalem, you'll notice that if you go to the Holy Land, there's a whole ring of mountains that surround Jerusalem. And all of those mountains are bigger than Jerusalem's mountain. Jerusalem's mountain is dwarfed. And all the other ones are so much bigger. But in the scriptures, we see this in the prophets, we see this in the book of Psalms. When it talks about the mountain of the Lord, the mountain of Jerusalem, it talks about this mysterious way that God, when you look through his eyes, all of a sudden that little mountain rises up above all the other mountains. And what we saw at first glance, saying, wow, where it's really at is these other side mountains. What the Lord shows us is actually the one that really your heart is longing for, that your heart will find rest, is not in the sideshow, but it's right in the center. The mountain that seems little, but when we look through spirit-filled eyes, it is the mountain that is so much greater. So why do we keep making excuses for the things that don't satisfy? Insanity, remember that definition of insanity, is to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Why do we do this even in sort of funny ways? I'm going to just use the instance of coffee for any coffee drinkers that are here. Why is it sometimes that we just keep going back to that really bad brand of coffee, thinking that somehow this cup of coffee is going to be better? And it's that kind where at first it's really kind of nice, but then there's that bad aftertaste afterwards. You know, like Kirkland brand or that kind of thing. Sorry if anyone really likes that one, but it has that bad aftertaste afterwards. And yet we do this in life. We sort of see the things that seem like the big mountains, and we go after those. And yet we always are disappointed. We always, it's kind of a flash in the pan, and then emptiness, hollowness. And yet we keep making excuses saying, well, actually that's what I'm looking for, instead of this feast that's right in the center. And we keep going back and back and back. So I want to share with you about this young man who yesterday we celebrated his beatification. And he was a man, a young man. He died at the age of 15 in 2006. He was born in 1991. His name is Blessed Carlo Acutis. And he is someone that understood that these were the sideshows. And what our heart was really looking for was the mountain of the Lord, and he ran towards that mountain. He says this. He had a couple different quotes here. He said, "To always be close to Jesus, that's my life's plan." He also said, "Our aim has to be the infinite and not the finite. The infinite is our home, and we have always been expected in heaven." This is a young man that recognized that the finite is always going to not satisfy us, leave us unfulfilled. And so he saw that he was expected in heaven, and he ran towards that center mountain with spirit-filled eyes. I'm going to just share just a little. There's a lot to talk about with him, but I'm just going to share just a couple things. And I really encourage you, look him up. Bring him into your family prayer life. It's very interesting that there are both many young people that are coming to him right now, many parents that are coming to him right now, and many grandparents that are coming to him right now. And one of the reasons is he had such a love of grandparents, he had a love of taking care of the elderly, but also this is the generation, the millennial generation, which so many of them have not had the roots go into them to continue the faith. So many of them are moving away from the faith in different ways. And so many grandparents, and maybe you have grandchildren within your lives right now, that you're just praying that they come back to the Lord. That's why they're going to Blessed Carlo, because he's their age. 1991 he was born. That's my youngest brother's age. Many parents are coming to Blessed Carlo because they see the joy and the hope that this is the first time one of their children is a blessed in heaven. This is the first time in which the parents right now can look and say, my children can be saints. These are not just people from way, way long ago. This is the generation right now. This young man, he had a PlayStation. He played on a PlayStation. He used YouTube. You can actually look up his videos when he was a middle schooler. It's actually really, really funny. You just see this sort of awkward, goofy, junior high kid making faces in his YouTube videos, playing air guitar, and you're just kind of like, wow, this guy's a saint. He loved soccer. He played on a soccer team. He apparently was a class clown, and he had to learn when to be funny and when not to. So his teachers would be like, okay, bro, not right now. He talked too much. And so his teachers also had to say, okay, there's a time to talk, and there's a time not to. And so, you know, he struggled with some of these funny little quirks. But why is he a saint? It's because he made Jesus his first priority. And the beautiful thing, the powerful thing about his life witness is his normalcy. He shows us that there's no excuse for any of us to not become a saint. He didn't have profound miracles or supernatural experiences or, you know, things that we normally think of sometimes that sort of separate us from the saints to be like, wow, that's amazing, that person did that. But that's not me. And many times we say the saints are really for a really kind of an elite class. And yet what Vatican II reminds us is that there's a universal call to holiness. Every single person here, your life's destiny. And if you don't reach that destiny, it's the only tragedy of life, is not to become a saint. And he shows us how to be able to love in the little, normal, ordinary ways. He understood using technology in a beautiful way, but in a way that didn't rule him, that he was able to use it for God's greater glory. He had a PlayStation, but he also knew that if he spent too much time on it, he would waste time being able to do what God was calling him to. And so he used it in a way of saying, this is good, this is fun, but I'm not going to let it control me. And so he actually, at a certain moment, he said, I'm only going to play 1 hour a week on my PlayStation. And he struggled with that. He really wanted to play. And yet he said, I'm going to offer that up for the salvation of souls. He loved to eat. He loved to eat all sorts of stuff. But he also recognized there's a time and proper way to eat. So he just can't like stuff his face all the time. But he said, that too, I'm going to watch how I eat in a moderate way and also offer that up for the souls in purgatory and for all of those who are in need. He had a sensitivity to take care of his friends. Many of them were struggling with purity issues. Many of them were struggling with experimentation with drugs. And many of them witnessed after his death that he was one of those that was able to walk with them as a friend and to live out that purity of heart in his own life that helped them be able to come back to the light. And he also had a profound love of the Eucharist. His family wasn't practicing. They came maybe at Easter, maybe at a wedding, but it was Carlo, when he was younger, who just wanted to come to the church and say hello to Jesus. And so he would actually drag his parents along saying, I want to go to church, I want to go to church. And at first they're like, okay, we're going to go to the church. But ultimately they started to fall in love with Jesus through his love, his gentleness, his kindness, his joy, his enthusiasm about loving Jesus. And that love of Jesus in the Eucharist allowed him to use his technology skills to create a website that talked about all the Eucharistic miracles throughout the world. You can actually go to that website today. Just look it up. Blessed Carlo Eucharistic Miracles website, a website made by a saint. It's really cool. But he also shows us how to use the internet for God's greater glory, because it can go to so many dark areas. But he said, yes, we have to be careful of that, but we can use it to evangelize and to share the faith. Lastly, he was diagnosed with acute leukemia. And when he received that diagnosis when he was 15 years old, just like the whole rest of his life, which was a cheerful love of God, still with struggles, still with battles, but he said, I want to always be close to Jesus. So he said, I offer this suffering for the Holy Father, for the church, for all of those who are in need. And as he was dying in the midst of his illness, he was always thinking about others. He even was saying to the nurses who had to pick him up from his hospital bed, he said, I'm so sorry that I'm so heavy that it's a burden to you guys. So he was just always thinking about how to love others. And he was 15 years old when he died. And now a blessed in heaven. And like I said before, his popularity is just going like wildfire right now. He's a blessed. That means that this is more of a local thing that happens. His beatification was in Assisi. When they're canonized, that's when it's in Rome and it's super, super big. But now it's almost treated like a canonization because there are so many people that are going to him, seeing in the midst of the darkness of this year, 2020, the darkness of how so many of our younger generations have fallen away from the faith, or maybe have never experienced an encounter with the Lord. Blessed Carlo is given to us now to say, you can have a PlayStation and become a saint. You can play on your high school soccer team and become a saint. You can live a normal life. He's buried in a hoodie and jeans and Nike sneakers. He's a kid of our day and age. And yet, he made Jesus his first priority. He ran to the mountain of the Lord and stopped going to the sideshows. How can we imitate his life? Again, there is no excuse for any of us not to become a saint. We need to ask the Lord for his intercession. Lord, take my life and allow me to not waste time on things that will not fulfill. Let me run to the only one that matters, and to love others through